don't we avail ourselves of this too often because we say, well, partisanship has taken over?
Beware of a lawyer with one case and a reporter with one story.
There will eventually be a point of pent-up demand on Capitol Hill to work together and get things done.
We, the people, are supposed to decide who governs us.
I think it's really hard to argue that the tax cuts did not actually move the needle on the economy.
Okay, long pause there. Long pause.
And I paused for a minute whether I should open that door, but
Sure, we'll all run through it. Hi, I'm Bill Bennett, and welcome to Wise Guys. We have a good show for you today, some thoughtful discussion without interruption, but certainly there will be some disagreement, and I am delighted to host this distinguished group. We are here at the Prime Rib Restaurant in Washington, D.C. Wish I could tell you it was my first time here or my brother's first time here. Not true. We've been here before. To my right over here is Oliver North. He is a distinguished American, a war hero, an iconic figure in American life. We have with Wise Guys a wise girl, if I may, Maria Bartiromo. She is the host of Mornings with Maria and Sunday Morning Futures, which I watch, I shouldn't say religiously every Sunday. You got to do something else, but I do watch regularly. Bob Bennett, or as we call him in our house, Uncle Bob. Bob Bennett, one of Washington's most distinguished lawyers, represented Bill Clinton, represented Cap Weinberger, represented all sorts of other people. Ari Fleischer, who was President George W. Bush's communications director or press spokesman?
Press secretary.
Press secretary, and is now head of Fleischer Communications. All right, let's get started. I was rereading, and I really was rereading because I did read the Federalist when I was assigned it the first time, and I was reading about powers and the separation of powers, executive, legislative, judicial. Didn't see anything in there about special counsels or independent counsels. Did the founders make a mistake and not put a provision in there for special or independent counsels? You've been one, I think, or something like it, and I know you've had an opinion on this, Bob. Do we need them? What do we need them for?
well, I think, first of all, there's a real difference between independent counsels and special counsels. I do think we need a special counsel when the investigation involves the highest levels of government. It's something that I think is essential, but it's unfortunate that we ever need them because you give so much power to one individual. But there's no question that it was Justice Rehnquist who wrote the Morrison opinion that said independent counsels, since they can be removed by the president, is constitutional. And then Congress did away with it, and now we have this special counsel statute.
But while we're operating now with a special counsel, there are also congressional committees looking at the same things. Why isn't the Congress good enough organization or institution to do this? We now have double, triple, and there are calls even for another special counsel to look into what this special counsel is doing.
Well, I hate to offend my friends in Congress, but they are simply incapable of doing a meaningful investigation. I have had many clients appear before them. You know, they're too partisan, they leak, it's a game. I just don't have any confidence in congressional investigations, and I've been involved in many of them, and I have been special counsel to the Senate Ethics Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I still say that.
So, but you have confidence in these special counsels? You think they've done a good
depends
job
who you
historically?
pick.
Okay.
It all depends on who you pick.
And it's funny because I think, there's something about a special counsel that is very transparent because it basically tells the world, well, we can't do this in-house. And forget about the 93 U.S. attorneys that could have done it, or the 10,000 lawyers that you have at the Justice Department. They can't do it either. You've got to get somebody from the outside to actually investigate.
As a guy who's a little bit of experience both with congressional committees and with a so-called independent counsel. Absolutely
not
right.
as an independent counsel and not as a congressional investigator, but being on the receiving end.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and absolutely right. There's nothing in the Federalist Papers or this wonderful document to which I took an oath to support and defend with my body if I had
the
to.
Constitution.
Constitution of the United States. Number one, if the Congress can't do its job, then they ought to step aside, because the power to investigate the executive branch of the United States is very clearly in this document, right? It is the role of the Congress to ensure that the executive branch is carrying out the laws. Therefore, you don't need somebody from outside to come in with unfettered power.
Yes.
But there's an important starting point we aren't addressing, and the reason that you have what's now a special counsel is because of ethical considerations. And that's important. A special counsel is triggered when the top people of justice make the determination, in this case the Attorney General, that he is involved in the allegations in one way or another, and therefore he must recuse, which is a proper and wise ethical act for an Attorney General to follow. That then triggers a whole separate series of events, as what happened here. Now,
That's
the
what
audience
happened
say,
here, excuse me.
here involving the,
No,
Trump
but
investigation,
the-
the collusion charges, Bob Mueller.
But the
let me
appointment-
separate
go ahead.
something. Independent counsel is no longer the law of the land, as opposed to special counsel.
Right.
And the difference is simple. Independent counsels were accountable to no one. They were truly independent. That was a law that expired. Democrats and Republicans were both sick of it. Law expired. So you have special counsel. A special counsel is reporting to the Department of Justice. It is a difference. Independent was fully independent. Special counsel, as we saw when Bob Mueller made his indictments of the Russians the other month, that has to be approved by the Department of Justice, main justice. And so special reports to justice, independent, never did.
Also, he's picked by the Attorney General or his delegate, whereas the independent counsel was picked by a three-judge court, which sort of really gets you in this separation of powers. There's one problem. This is the last thing I'll say about this. While I think it's essential, such as in the current case, you know, beware of a lawyer with one case and a reporter with one story. And the idea that the whole law enforcement machinery is being handled by a person, directed towards a person, is a pretty scary. When I was a federal prosecutor, I had 150 cases. And I'm not just saying this because I am an admirer of Colonel North. I never would have prosecuted him in 100 years. But you put somebody in that position with that one case, I'll tell you, it's a scary thing.
But isn't there an issue? Look, I'm surrounded by very bright people here. It strikes me that up to this point, what's happened with Mueller is that he's got a bunch of cases that had nothing to do with the original issue of was the Trump administration colluding with the Russians before the election to affect the outcome. And thus far, I think the American people look at it and say, there's nothing there.
Well, this is the risk of a special counsel law, that every nail needs a hammer. And they start to look everything, everywhere, and they stray from their original mission.
Yeah.
But on the other
Because they're
hand, if you are an investigator and you do find evidence of wrongdoing, do you just look the other way because your original charge had nothing to do with what you just found? That's a hard call for a counsel to make.
Would a U.S. attorney have started a case on, let's use any one of the people who've pled guilty thus far? Would he have started a case on that, given the focus he was supposed to have on what the Russians were doing in this country?
Fair
when
question.
you look at what the Russians have been doing, that's the real issue.
Right.
And the Russians are still doing it.
But he's investigating people. And when you're investigating
There you go.
specific people, you're going to find out things in those specific people's lives.
It-
and it has nothing to do with any collusion.
Absolutely right. And
Right, well, they
therefore-
write that right into
the-
the assignment that if he finds anything else, look at my client, President Clinton.
Yeah.
They found other things.
Okay, long pause there. Long pause.
I paused for a minute in this group whether I should open that door, but
Sure, open it.
But
We'll all run through it.
Kenneth Starr's mandate was not initially
It's Whitewater.
Monica Lewinsky
Sure.
and all the other things.
Right.
Sure.
So that's just the way it is.